Isu Bang of the future. Excellent cooling. Standard comp running out for side of Jupiter 3-3 Global Esports. Luke's on the Winston, and he may think about changing onto the Ryan. In fact, all the Global Esports are thinking about changing on something once they've seen that Jupiter have a standard rollout for themselves.
Yeah, it's going to be that Reinhardt, Kim Yutei going to roll out on the Zarya. They're just looking to match 1-to-1.
And right before the point unlocks as well. Okay, so this is where Jupiter actually has at least a decent amount of positioning control as the point does unlock. Global Esports now a little bit far behind. Have to get into combat.
That's a really big pickup though. They can probably push that advantage. They will be able to get onto the point just before it caps. As I say that, they step off a half second. Jupiter will get the point, but now Global Esports are here with a numbers advantage that they have now extended with finding Amikin plus Claire. And that's going to be that. So it's looking like Global Esports will be able to cap this one out. They will grab it off Jupiter.
And that's an interesting frag coming through from Xeonflux as well, where, okay, you don't really expect that to be your opening. Jupiter just a little bit too extended in terms of poking their heads behind out from the shields. Now Global Esports going to be able to recover fairly quickly from, you know, a reasonably late swap with a point unlocked just as they walked in. Now looking at ults as well, Zer has himself an Earthshatter. Global Esports has themselves a Transcendence.
It's going to be Zer having to use the Shatter, ends up paying off pretty nicely, but Savagod gets picked off, and unfortunately Zer not able to follow up on his own Shatter. Maybe a little bit over-ambitious there from Jupiter. So they just kind of charge Xenofly's mech way into the back line and ends up finding Hengi, and Global Esports are just kind of riding the high right now.
They haven't had to use too many older ults yet. They've been forced to use the self-destruct to remake Xenofly, but the Transcendence has been kept pretty safe. Zer pretty optimistic on the Earthshatter. They caught one member, but you know, like you mentioned, himself couldn't really do much. He got chunked out so fast, and Jupiter haven't been able to do too much in the extra 40% that Global Esports has camped out since. Now kind of caught in this particular choke as Luke's looking for a shadow.
They do have Hengi coming up on a grab, but as long as Luke has this, commits it out, doesn't get too much done. Now it's going to be the grab from Kim Yutei first. Self-destruct just kind of
way up
yonder
inside.
from Ken Mohororo. They were obviously wanting to combo that up with a grab, but didn't quite plan that one out correctly. Luke has gone down though, so it is a numbers advantage for Jupiter. And the sound barrier from Faith has run out. That's actually their last ultimate. Jupiter do still have a sound barrier of their own, indeed one that they may just look to preserve here because they've found the opening to get onto the point.
And actually a big loss was losing the Transcendent. Xeonflux didn't quite save Luke. That was a solo grab on him. Global Esports probably could have been able to back out from there, save the 5 members, use the Transcendence as they're walking out to be able to contest again or something. Maybe if they then did save Luke, that would have been better as well. But the alternative to that is that Global Esports walk away. No Trance, no main tank, lose the point as well. They get 90%, however, which is still a decent lead, but Jupiter now can start snowballing.
This is where Global Esports are going to try and fish for an opening. Self-destruct, sound barrier out. They're going to try and take a fight on the ground while that's running. They've got Xeonflux and Faith both very low. They finally finish off one of those two, and now looking to find Faith as well. Well, I suppose they do find him, but not in the God kind of way. Global Esports is going to get run down for a second time.
Only member surviving here is Lil Rex. It's 5 down for GE, 50% nearly for Jupiter. Still 40% off from being able to equalize, but the ultimates are looking pretty healthy for them. Speaking of ultimates, Global Esports do also return with a couple of their own, despite losing pretty handily in that last fight. It's going to come down to tanks here because they have both Earthshatter and Grab, where it's his only Grab for Hengi.
Transcendence coming up for Xeonflux. It's going to be very nice as well. It's the immediate answer to Hengi. There it is, double grabs. You can hear that one in stereo. Self-destruct layered forward if they can make something of this. Faith ends up getting picked. They kind of needed Claire to
big shatter.
Place members. That's a decent shatter, to say the least, but nothing quite coming of it. However, it is still numbers advantage for Jupiter, who are now starting to run down the members of Global Esports that tried to retreat. Now we're into one-fight territory.
And this is ideal. Okay, Global Esports didn't lose members very quickly, but they lost them slowly, which means staggered respawns, especially approaching 90%. Jupiter looking very comfortable now. Global Esports don't have a lot to work with. Faith might get a sound barrier here. That's really what they can hope for because Jupiter otherwise are going to be able to take this round.
And Hengi's coming up on another grab. He used his at literally the same time as Kim Yutei. The fact that that is already off cooldown is absolutely phenomenal. Looking to get the commit though. It's going to be an early sound barrier out from Faith. The grab committed on the latter end of it. They need to make something happen here. Shatter out from Zer. Goes
it's 4.
Yeah, gets the members behind Luke there. So they look to follow up. They find Faith. Shatter out from Luke. Not enough. And they're off the point for that critical second. Jupiter going to take downtown.
I say recovery for Global Esports. That happened right at the start. It let them get over 50. They had, what, 80, 90% by the time the point went over again. But for Jupiter, holding on, getting those ultimates back in, being able to then snowball that further into the fight win that we eventually saw. And okay, this opening fight was a little rough for Jupiter, considering that they did cap early, so they got this opening while we still had the swap around for the compositions for Global Esports. But really it starts with Zero and Flux getting that initial pick through, and then the rest of the kills coming through as well.
Xenofly trying to board a train there. A train from Busan. Didn't quite work out.
Xer just lived. He was
Barely.
just on the edge. Unfortunately, that wasn't good enough to give them a round, or give them a particular fight win
Just
on this
imagine
opening point.
At this point, Xer is going, Xenofly, no, you have so much to live for.
His face was nearly touching that train. That's how
Very
close it was.
Shaved off the nose.
Speaking of faces touching,
Yeah, Luke and Xer meet face to face, and Xer ends up getting his face smashed in like a bowl of eggs. And it's going to be Global Esports handily winning the opening skirmish.
and that is a big waste of eggs, someone that likes eggs. And for Global Esports now,
You like eggs?
Luke looking up for that first Earth Shatter. Global Esports now a very clean opening. This time there wasn't that extra 11% for Jupiter as well. Global Esports much further ahead in ultimates also. They should be looking for a decent lead heading into 20-30, I would say, percent before Jupiter can really do too much.
Well, the Rex eating some pain there. Ends up popping the rally, but Faith not going to live, not going to benefit from that armor. So it's a numbers advantage for Jupiter, and they were just looking to counter spam and rotation. Weren't even necessarily looking for a pick. However, the DMAC on Ken Mahororo is nice. Self-destruct laid up from Xenofly. Able to pick off two in rotation, and Global Esports kind of pull one out of the air.
Jupiter, another reset here, still looking for a few ultimates. Rally's been conserved. Sabergod looking for Transcendence, also Global Esports. Not having to use too much here. It's been self-destruct. It's been also the rally. Grab into Earthshatter is still pretty big, and while Clear and Sabergod are still waiting for ults, this could be a timing opportunity for Global Esports.
That's really what they're banking on. Jupiter could still just find some kind of pick here, though. They have committed to these fights relatively cleanly.
And this is a difficult place to push out of because they're running into a loose. You can see Faith already looked for that boot.
Doesn't quite get the ideal one.
It's one.
Pushing Xer up. They are allowed to get the shatter underneath that, but they have been able to follow up. Now the counter shatter. Transcendences, grabs, the whole lot thrown into the mix. Self-destruct port from Ken Mahororo gets shielded out, but Amakin ends up getting knocked over. It's all over the show as finally the grab comes in from Hengi and the sound barrier on Claire to keep them safe as they push onto it. And Jupiter end up having more gas in the tank, able to go a few more laps here and pick up the point.
You had about 4 or 5 ultimates being thrown into the mix here. Double shatters, double grabs, transcendences being used, sound barrier. The only one that really isn't going to get used here is Faith's own sound barrier. For Global Esports now, getting at least 83%, very similar to what we saw for Downtown. But now, how can Jupiter get the snowball rolling? Because that's how they got that round back last time, and they're going to need to look for another one to close out this map.
This time around, they don't even have the lead necessarily. They've just got to re-grab. They've got to make this work out.
The boot forward.
Faith going down early, so once again Jupiter found what they needed, and this helps extend their lifespan a bit on this point. They get to charge up ultimates now.
And this is their own members, Xer, by the way, being pushed forward several times in a row, and good punish against Faith, who was in the middle of there being the one that was doing most of that pushing. Global Esports looking for the rotation around the other side. Jupiter already sniffing it out.
We've seen Faith get so much work done for this team in the past with those boots, and we're now starting to see teams just challenging directly. Self-destruct layered forward. They don't quite manage to get anyone into its sight line. It's also Transcendence Force from Sabergod, so
it's a big force.
Happy with that 1-for-1, and now a shatter, a massive shatter, and there's no kind of Transcendence to help answer it, nor is there a sound barrier. They've already lost Xer and the rest of the ultimates up from Global Esports. They can just cleanly rotate through them, press this advantage. Fair ends up committing a late sound barrier. They're trying to stay in this fight, but they're losing members.
And the problem is, it's a tough fight for Jupiter, because if they lose this one, Global Esports start ticking up from 83. Xer's even thrown his man into the mix as well, and Jupiter are bleeding ultimates, bleeding members, and they will get counter-capped.
And they're at the point now, they would have actually been able to still reset, come in with one last fight. They're at the point now where they've got no ultimates for that fight. Anything they could have held onto, they chose to throw in, and it backfired.
And now Global Esports looking at 90%, about to equalize in terms of round score. Jupiter still have one last Transcendence they can maybe walk out of here with, but they got to get there quickly. Look at that percentage point.
And all Global Esports have to do is grab them off the point. Claire's managed to touch. Transcendence is there from Sabagon, but Anakin's already down to the charge. Luke's low, though. If they can finish him off, that'd be huge. He does have a shatter. He's able to stay alive. Now has the shatter ready to commit. Throws it out, unfortunately, right into Zer's shield, but they're in possession of the point. They've demech Kenma Hororo. They find Claire as well. And there's just no counter trades from Jupiter. Global Esports going to equalize here on Busan.
And this is where you start to see, okay, for Jupiter, another slow start for them in terms of the actual initial neutral fight going into the round, and further into this, Global Esports rack up a huge percentage bonus that is very hard to come back from. You see it happen on Downtown because Jupiter still had ultimates in the bag. This time, Jupiter just didn't. They walked in, they slowly got ultimates as they fought through, but it starts with having their Transcendence forced out by Sabagon. When Kimute and Luke both have tank ultimates available, once those cannot be countered, because Claire also didn't have a sound barrier at the time as either, Jupiter are then getting really desperate. They're looking at the timer thinking, kind of looking to have a must win here. If we don't, we're going into overtime. At the same time, though, they're losing any potential for actually winning that overtime push, which didn't happen.
A little bit rough. Maybe a little unnecessary, but they're not out of it. It's a 1-1 so far. They did come reasonably close at least, so still winnable for either team, really.
Both teams really opting into playing as much 3-3 as possible so far on Busan.
While they still can.
As we said earlier, it's going to be the last ride for most of these teams. The neutrals have been going Global Esports' way so far. Can they continue that forward?
It's a lot of pressure on Zer. He actually ends up turning his back to the enemy to charge back towards his team. Now they're just kind of juggling aggro. Kenma Hororo eats too much, eats a stun, and ends up demexed. Now Claire goes down, and no counter trades out from Jupiter. So once again, it's going to be Global Esports getting the better end of the opening skirmish.
And in a way, I think this is a big mistake from Jupiter, because how were they able to take a round off a challenge? How were they able to take it close and get a map off of other teams? They were playing, at least recently, Hengi on the water, Anakin on the fire. That should be their bread and butter. You see Global Esports rolling out on a standard 3-3. Ryan Goats, what beats that, especially on a map like Sanctuary? Play the fire. It's what Anakin can do.
I just find it so fascinating that Jupiter are not leading into this. Hengi as well actually has a Widowmaker, so they've got ultimates coming into this fight, though. They at least want to cycle through that before they just straight up change off, but I also don't think that ever really will change off. They favor this 3-3 too much.
Good news is they do come back in with a decent amount of ultimates here, but they eat a decent ultimate as well.
It's a nasty shatter from Luke, but they feel pressured enough, not able to follow up on their own shatter, so Faith ended up committing Sound Barrier. That's grab eaten by Kenma Hororo, and Global Esports do survive Hengi's grab, but now it's Jupiter with the better end in terms of ultimates. They've still got a sound barrier. Global Esports do not. But will they be able to get any use out of it? They have to commit it now, but they still lose Sabagon to the self-destruct, and they haven't actually found any kills in this time. Zer's Shatter available again. He's already used one in this fight earlier to no effect. Can he get more out of this one?
1 second away. They've lost another member now. That's a DMEC, and Zer's gone too. This fight is going the way of Global Esports. And once again, you're starting to see a position for GE where they're going to tick up to 80% plus, and Jupiter are not on the board yet.
And it was right on the cusp of it being winnable for Jupiter, but they don't connect a few critical ultimates. They also get caught by the only thing Global still had left, being Xenofly's self-destruct.
And I think if they kept Sabagon alive there, if he stays alive and it's 6v6, then they play into the sound barrier advantage. Maybe something happens for them, because then Zer plays aggressively, drops a shatter. That's how they win. But Global Esports forcing the overtime now, and Jupiter going to play whatever else they have remaining.
And unlike last time, they don't even have percentage progress of their own at this point. Kimbute's grab has been survived, but not by much. Sabagon has to commit his Transcendence now to keep the team alive so they can follow up on Hengi's grab, and they are going to be able to accomplish that. So they're going to slowly start pulling this one back from a 100-0 against them, but they've got a long road ahead of them if they want to close out Busan.
And that's at least been the consistency here for Jupiter, where, okay, across 3 rounds now, yes, they lose the openings. Yes, there is a big lead for Global Esports, but they have been able to at least get a fight in there, get a counter cap in there, get some percentage points on, but can they win? Because Global Esports have a lot of time they can work with. 99 is a better lead than they've had across all the other rounds, and they are going to get more ultimates, and they can win with those.
Jupiter, they need to last a long time. They ideally want to find a pick during this rotation. Self-destruct board from Xenofly. Doesn't find anyone. The shatter from Zer. They look to get Little Rags, but they got a sound barrier to answer it. Now Zer and Kenma Hororo so
looks open.
Zer goes down. And now Ken Mohororo follows him, and it looks like that's going to be it. That is going to be them just kicking the door down, charging back onto the point, retaking possession. They're looking absolutely fine in this fight. Shatter out from Luke. There may be a sound barrier there. It's going to have to be a transition as well. They're trying desperately to keep in this one. Grab from Hengi gets eaten. Xur has been able to rejoin the fight, as is Ken Mohororo, though, so they may still be in this one. Self-destruct finds nothing. They need kills, Jupiter, and they're still just not fighting them. They finally get one now with Kim Yute. Faith Stun may end up going down as well. They have brought this fight back from the brink.
And Xur has an Earth Shatter as well, so they can even use this if they really have to, but you have to look at where Global Esports went wrong. Luke had a huge advantage for a long time, but he was super pressured out. He had a free Earth Shatter. He eventually does use that one, hits 2 members. You really wanted to see a little bit more out of that. You wanted to see that being a cleanup, but that wasn't any kills, sadly, for the side of Global Esports. Now Jupiter, they've done a lot of work, 80% plus. They're going to reach their own overtime, and this is now going to be a bit of a coin flip. Any team can take this fight.
I mean, once again, we have brought it into a final fight kind of situation where the winner just straight up takes the map. Every single one has gone to this point. Now Jupiter looking to leverage those support ultimates predominantly. They don't quite have them, only just getting them now. Again, self-destruct from Xenofly, doesn't find anything. Shatter is out. Sound barrier to try rescue it. Ken Mohororo is trying to get that mech back. He needs it. Lickety split. It's going to be C on Flux with the Transcendence, and Xur's been about. He might be in trouble. Grab does not save him because they still had a couple of members out of it, and now the counter grab from Kim Yute. Far more devastating. It's going to be Global Esports getting the better end of the final fight 2 times in a row now to take Busan.
Speaking of twos there, Jupiter, twice in a row, they used double support ultimates, laid them on top of each other. See, the more disciplined side of Global Esports were able to just spread that out a little bit further. Faith drops the final sound barrier, and that's got to be enough. So just making up for a few mishaps there. But what you can say about Global Esports is the fact that they take the early leads on all 3 rounds of Busan gives them that extra leverage on this particular map, and it's always Jupiter trying to catch up, trying to get something back where maybe they, if they had a little bit more to work with early on, they wouldn't be in that kind of position. So this isn't going to be that map so far where the map tax comes in.
And it's like I almost don't know how to look at this, right? Because like Jupiter, credit, like they're making it competitive. They're making it seriously competitive, but they're not actually winning, right? And you'd say, well, that's not good enough. And that's actually been a lot of the time the story throughout at least the last few weeks of this season, right? Like they've looked good, there's been promising signs, and they've just consistently fallen short of the mark. On the other side of that, you almost look at Global Esports and you go, should this really be getting this close? Does this team not want to look cleaner than this going into playoffs?
I think it's kind of out of their control as well, because Jupiter are a team that's kind of stepped up at this stage, and it's going to get close because Jupiter have been better as competition. I think it's quite apparent in the fact that it went to 1-1, then on the 3rd round you go to Sanctuary, where it ends up being 1 fight away from either side taking it, and it's a bit of a far cry to, okay, the door's actually open for Jupiter now to be able to get some wins on there. They haven't stepped through many of those doors, to be fair, but previously those doors weren't even open at all. They've had completely closed doors in front of them. They had no opportunities. The opportunities are there. It comes time now where, are they going to be able to get 3 maps in a series anyway? This is their last match of the season, by the way. They're not going to playoffs. This is their last chance to get something done. They're 1 map down, 3, maybe 4 maps left to go, depending on how this one ends up. Global Esports, you favor them, but it's not impossible for Jupiter.
And that's the thing, that one was close. The real question is actually, does that mean the other ones are going to be close? Or does it mean we're now going to swing hard the way of Global Esports until maybe a 1-map tax comes through, if it even does? Like, as much as we joke about that, it's certainly not a guaranteed thing. And I very much feel like I could see this series go either way. I feel like we could see every single map play out like Busan relatively close. GE end up just edging it out consistently in the fights that matter the most. Or we could see Jupiter actually start to edge out Global Esports here, where they just kick it up a little bit more of a notch from Busan, do what they've failed to do so far this season, and start to consistently win where they've otherwise been consistently losing the critical fights.
And I actually think still Jupiter can be leaning into other comps. They've been playing Widow Vara, and that is a bit of a flavor of the month, at least for this current patch. And may be the case that, you know, that would have been better for them. I would argue that definitely on Sanctuary that would have been open. You don't even have to play the Widow. You can just play the Pharah, and that's enough to make Global Esports have to respond in some way. But they're opting into a mirror where I'm not sure that this is going to be the type of team where they can win these mirrors now. They got close, but let's also go to the fact that Global Esports had an early lead every single time they won. Every single neutral, they always had a huge percentage lead in front of Jupiter for all 3 rounds, and it feels like their game to lose almost because they're expected to win in those scenarios, and Jupiter always has to catch up. They can't be behind going into Volskaya.
I would be very afraid to live in a city with just giant robots wandering around at random.
I think you feel very safe and protected.
I would feel both very safe and unsafe. I would feel safe from external threats. I would feel very unsafe because I feel like at any moment the robot could just squish me by accident.
Hey, just don't go near them. That'll probably help. Jupiter. Global Esports, they want to get real close. This is like a factory in Volskaya. Hengi is going to be on Summer, Kimahororo on the Hanzo, and Amakin back on his signature fire as Global Esports are going to attack in Kim Yute sniping.
You say missing for now.
And there is pressure on the sides. I mean, you see Hengi harassing there as well. He's got a job ahead of him to at least shut Amakin down. Rotation still very important. Global Esports with the Orisa hog comp have to be in position for the hook combos rather to work.
Jupiter haven't quite got that much spam damage out yet. I'd like to see a little bit more come through, maybe even a pick. Instead, it's Kenmahororo getting pressured, barely staying alive. Just feel like he almost cheated death there. Instead, actually, Xenofly pushing in to try and convert that kill, ends up losing his mech. Xur did get traded, which does take a bit of pressure back off, but now we start to see the damage coming through from Jupiter as Global Esports get less and less tight and less coordinated.
And to be fair, though, Jupiter are able to... They're getting a decent amount of kills as Global Esports had decent positioning. They got the high ground, but they still had a few members being harassed on the ground. They still had Amakin in the air around that high ground section, pressuring the tanks down as well. So for Global Esports, they couldn't quite consolidate all their members together. They couldn't quite hide everyone behind a shield, and they're going to get picked apart on the sides. And Jupiter now looking at ultimates. EMP on the way as well. Global Esports 1.5 minutes down.
You feel like Jupiter, in a way, have weathered the worst of it, right? This is the point where they have those ultimates available. The EMP will be a really big one, actually, more so, I would argue, than the Dragon Strike or Rocket Barrage. Nicely connecting as well, slows down the rotation.
Hack on Xenofly as well, so tanks are just being pressured out. Can't really do too much until everyone's together again. They're going to take the opposite high ground. At least they're consolidated this time. Dragon Strike from Kimahororo.
He's more than happy to throw that one in. A little bit of a strange angle, actually. Doesn't end up pressuring too much now though the EMP comes through. But Kimahororo is already down. Hengi as well. And Jupiter kind of whiffing a bit of this. They start getting the trades in. Hook is onto Xur, but he's got Primal Rage running. And now they're starting to collect in a few more kills. Unfortunately, he goes down with the whole hog. But the rest of the fight, Jupiter have had a little bit more success. It's still very tenuous, though. Closer respawns here for Global Esports.
Yeah, but there's members for Jupiter, and they had the Rocket Barrage still. And for most of Global Esports, they've lost their big ultimates. They've lost their sniper now. So who's really going to stop Amakin at the end of the day? Supercharger coming out for Glue.
And it has predominantly been Amakin doing the work. But now that the respawners are coming in, you lose Claire, and that's just a huge issue. It even makes Amakin unsafe going in for a Rocket Barrage. I think he recognizes that now. May still try and find it as kind of a last-ditch thing, but knows that they are not going to get back on this point. They just need to let it go.
And two things needed to happen there for Amakin. One, that Xur needs to stay alive. The Primal Rage only barely kept him up for a while as the whole hog was tearing him apart. Secondly, Claire needed to live on the Mercy as well. If those two things happen, then you can Rocket Barrage him because you have relative safety from both Mercy pocketing you and also Xur creating space. But Jupiter, unfortunately, they're going to have to concede a decent hold, though. It did take a long time for Global Esports to get any sort of momentum, and they've only got 4 minutes and 50 to start with, pushing into B.
Oh, unfortunately, Hook going wide. That is a ridiculous Dragon Strike. Immediately gets 3. I mean, compare and contrast, right? You know, you compare that to the disastrous Dragon Strike on Jupiter's defense the first time around, or sorry, in the fight just been, and now Little Rack's able to get 3. They've lost no one effectively with that res coming through onto Luke, and now just poised to completely cap out.
So off the map there, Global Esports now in a decent position, but the big EMP might just be able to save Jupiter.
Can anyone follow up on it? They barely get
Anakin
Theon Flux and Luke, and they're managing to make this one work. Now Global Esports at least getting pushed back, even as they find kills. They're starting to look more and more like exit frags.
This is going to be Jupiter now holding on to the point. They're not going to be able to do this twice in the case where, okay, 2 ticks came through. Jupiter can't just wait for respawns. The next push from Global Esports, if it's big enough, they're going to be able to take that last tick. However, this is going to be a decent amount of swaps for Global Esports. You can feel as the Dragon Strike just flies in there. Maybe Lil Rags can catch something if he's lucky. Unlucky this time around. Ate all of that luck up when he got the triple. For Global Esports, there is going to be a bit of a rebuilding phase. During that time, Jupiter can look to snowball this defense further with the nano boost, going into the Earth Shatter as well. Otherwise, Global Esports, if they have enough point pressure, they'll cap.
Here's a cute tech, actually. Xur intentionally stood in an amount of that Dragon Strike so that he would get low. Sabagot could heal him up. He popped about 40% ult charge, now has a nano boost that they can commit onto Xur, looking to get aggressive with that nice biotic grenade as well, landing onto the rest of Global Esports. And Jupiter really took an opportunity there to jumpstart the ultimate economy.
And they were ahead anyway. They were ahead quite significantly in many areas, but this is just going to guarantee that they're going to be able to get the maximum value. Sabagot using the nano boost to win a fight, going over to the Zen now to match Xeon Flux on the other end. And for Global Esports, rebuilding phase, is it successful? Somewhat. Xenofly got up there. Rest of them lost pretty quickly. Xeon Flux at least has nearly a Transcendence, but can't really win an entire push off just one Transcendence.
Not even the heartiest of tempo Transcendences. Hengi's holding onto this grab as well. That will probably draw out the Transcendence from Xeon Flux.
Who defends the Earth Shadow? You have to have Luke blocking that one out. Has to be playing on guard here. Global Esports still have 2 minutes, but they don't quite have ultimates, and this might not be the push.
It's going to be the grab. They actually commit double ultimates in the grab and the Earth Shadow, which means the Transcendence kind of got double valued there. Claire ends up going down, and that's
big loss.
The sound barrier. Now Xur's getting pressured out, and with that Orb of Discord, they're having a hard time. Shadow from Luke, unfortunately, goes straight into the Shield of Xur, but Xur goes down to the self-destruct, and now counter self-destruct from Ken Mahororo. Can't get anything done. This is just absolutely a disaster now for Jupiter. Hengi's forced off the point. Sound barrier out from
Hengi's got to live here.
They've got a grab in from Kim Butte, and they're absolutely mowing over the members that were caught in it as that sound barrier was running out. That was bafflingly bad.
Something about Jupiter and committing double ultimates there, resulting in, sadly for them, huge value out of Transcendence, as you mentioned, from the side of Global Esports here, where, okay, the Transcendence was only going to be able to counter one ultimate if it was used one at a time. But for Jupiter, they saw an opportunity, thought, okay, this is going to be the fight where we're going to get a lot of kills here. This is going to be the moment one Transcendence counters everything. Then you lose Claire, who has your sound barrier. If he lives, maybe you still win this fight because you have the longevity and the engagement. You put that on top of the fact that there's already 2 ticks on the board, and point pressure is a real thing for Global Esports to tap into. You now can't delay this point by waiting for respawns. You now have to throw bodies onto the point itself, throwing ultimates on the point itself to try and rescue it. You just have this entire domino effect of disaster happening for Jupiter as soon as the first sign of error comes through.
It almost feels like the same as what ultimately happened on point A defense. You get a Dragon Strike that goes wide, you get a low value EMP. I'll give them credit, they nearly rescued that fight, but nearly is still a no. It didn't actually end up happening, it was just plausible for quite a long while. And B ended up being more disastrous when push actually came to shove, and it feels like Jupiter are in a situation constantly where they have to rescue a fight or rescue a map. Sometimes it's working, most of the time it's not, and you wonder, why do they keep ending up in that position in the first place?
I think Global Esports likely would have capped out B anyway, but they would have done that in the overtime because they would have spent the last 139, which the time bank they had, to re-push on their final engagement when they actually have ultimates. But they got there earlier. They got there much earlier for Jupiter. And now Jupiter on their own offense. Hengi back on the Sombra, losing Kemo Hororo really quickly, but this is otherwise the same comp they ran on defense.
Nice catch from Lil Rax. I do like the comp from Jupiter, though. They should be able to get some good value out of Amakin. They're actually going to make a swap over onto the Wrecking Ball, get a bit more pressure, and also Ken Mahororo on Tracer. I like this comp even more.
So they want to have the flank pressure that's more important to them, especially to dislodge any possible bunker setup that is double sniper, and while flankers will be effective, assuming they live. But for Global Esports, if they can get the picks, and that's really what their comp is designed to do, it's going to really shut Jupiter down.
Zerd takes a bit of damage. Feels like eventually something will break on either side here. Either Jupiter will get a critical pick, or they'll slowly start to run out of steam.
And what it does do is just displace Global Esports. You can see them kind of running around here. Can't quite find a focus. That's at least going to be a kill, but they need to find where they can stand. Again, they need to find up their next setup for the bunker. Jupiter haven't been able to push up despite getting a kill. In fact, sorry, that was their... they lost despite pushing Global Esports out of their original position. Then they lost the member.
And like I said, this is now where they start to run out of steam a little bit. Now just getting slowed down a little bit more. Global Esports have regrouped a little bit. It's not ideal though, and they're able to start making some headway, but they lose Savagod. That would have been a nano boost, a much needed one. Instead, Xeon Flux able to put his onto Kim Yutae, who starts popping the shots off. That's one onto Anakin as well. The body shot enough to kill him with the last half second of the nano boost. And Jupiter, like I said, they ran out of steam. They tried to keep going, but it ends up falling flat.
Kim Yutae shoots that headshot through Luke's body, by the way. That was very impressive. Had the infrasight up, of course, so had to kind of predict the movement of the opposing Widowmaker. It's Jupiter now looking for a couple of swaps. Kim Hororo getting taken down post-sleep. Anakin on the Hanzo here. Let's see if he can do some damage. They're almost matching in compositions if it wasn't for the fact that they are lacking a D.Va, which they're no longer lacking anymore.
Now, all they really have is this nano boost. You don't have your ideal target to put it on either. It's not like you can put it on a Winston or a Wrecking Ball or even a Pharah, someone that could really open things up for you.
I think you got to put in Anakin here or potentially Kim Hororo because you want to get the damage in there as well. The 130 mark now. Neither team has too much to work with. Jupiter has more ultimates, at least on the side of the supports here. So one less member though. You'd rather have the member right now.
Claire may be able to go for a res, indeed he will, but that's a very tenuous position to res into, and Hengi immediately goes down, and then still Little Rax finds the other sniper. This guy's a one-man army right now, taking out both his counterparts in the sniper battles.
He will be a one-man army if he stays alive here, which is able to do.
Kenma Hororo as well.
Cleans up everybody. Jupiter's going to make another swap here, back onto standard goats, I think, potentially. And yep, Kim Hororo will respawn back on the D.Va. Claire's going to drop the Mercy entirely. And Jupiter are going to bank on the success of Volskaya and this one push on a standard 3-3 comp with the Ryan and a nano boost, and that's it. Sorry, with the Winston.
Trying to push into the supercharger though is going to be tough. It's going to be a Dragon Strike here from Little Rax. That can disrupt some positioning potentially. Has to reel around, look for the angle. Savagod gets picked off. Kim Yutae finds both supports. And it doesn't matter that Little Rax went down. Zera's put to sleep. He's getting pressured out here. May live, but honestly, the damage has been done to Jupiter.
It's time to think now, how can Jupiter win this? What do they actually have to work with? Zer's probably going to go down here. No primal rage for him. That's a heartbreaker.
And now Kenma Hororo takes an anti-heal as well. He's struggling to get back to his team, has to drive by the rest of Global Esports to even get there. May just do it, but there's not exactly much team left to pull back to. Savagod will find out Kim Yutae, but they need to get a lot more done than just that. Self-destruct forward will not find anything from Kenma Hororo.
Someone's got to contest.
Slept. He's going to get brought low at least, and now finally finished off, and these members just have to dive for the point, but they don't have the health bars, they don't have the damage output to back it up. Global Esports looking to complete themselves a full hold.
They don't even have the primal rage that Zer still has, that he didn't pop. Jupiter now just completely run out of members, completely run out of options, and Global Esports taking Volskaya somewhat easily here. It was competitive at least on Jupiter's defense, but still a cap out, still a finish for Global Esports, and then no cap out for Jupiter, not even on a going into that second map. And if you're thinking about map tags right now, not going to happen on maps 1 and 2. Doesn't happen on Kings Road, doesn't happen on Dorado. At this rate, you're pretty convinced that Global Esports are going to win this series. However, to be fair, you were somewhat expecting them to win anyway. The real question has been, can Jupiter show up on any of these maps today?
The problem is they've looked good, and then suddenly they've not, right? Like, it's been a very dramatic shift. Like I said, they've fought really well, but they're constantly in positions where it feels like they're having to recover right? They're fighting to stay in it. They're having to pull something back from a poor situation. They're doing that very well. They're looking very impressive, but they're often falling just short of the mark. The reality is, if you're fighting well without being in that situation in the first place, that is where you can actually take wins. That's where they are finding their success when they're having it, but they keep ending up in these deficits to begin with, or they're just whiffing at the most critical of moments. We see so many times they've doubled up on ultimates and layered things that it's ultimately cost them the fight.
Yeah, and a lot of, like you mentioned, missed opportunities in other areas as well, where they have a specific push where this one looks good for them, this is where they have advantage, and this is where you expect them to get a lot more out of it. But then someone goes down, you have that huge plays by Kim Gu-tae getting multiple headshots on the Widowmaker. Lil Rax being that one-man army and just taking down everybody, kills Anakin again straight after he gets res. It's just too much. It's too much for Jupiter to deal with when everyone on Global Esports has shown up the way they are. And now, staring into the face of a 0-7 season. Final opportunity to maybe bring it back up to the break, but for now, we are going to take a bit of a rest before Global Esports and Jupiter go at it again. We'll see you guys soon.